Hello,
Wow.
Scott.
Hi
Thank
there.
you for joining my show, Engineer Her Path. We stream this live on LinkedIn every week, and then it's also on podcast and YouTube. And it's for my audience of women in STEM. But
Wow.
we've known each other a little bit virtually, and we finally
In
at
August?
Enrichment, the annual Dave Ramsey Financial Coaches Conference.
Yes. Yes. It was wonderful.
Yeah, and I love your energy and just your kind, teaching, gentle nature. And when we're talking, you had a great topic that you wanted to share about, which was about the importance of a will.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have seen more damage done to families because a will wasn't available and or no will was created. And about 2 years ago, I was teaching a class realizing that so many of the students did not have a will. And I was so moved by that or incensed by it that I took my own will and I turned it into a template and made sure that those who needed one could use it, at least in a pinch. Just fill out the form, fill it out. If you have guardians for kids, fill that part out. If not, take it out and then list the beneficiaries, list whatever anything special that they wanted to give away, and then get it signed, get it witnessed, get it notarized. At least they'd have something to work with. There would be no charge unless there was a charge for a notary, but at least they'd get something going. And then when the time came when they had enough cash on hand, it wouldn't be that hard to get it reviewed, update it, whatever needs to be done so that they would have a good legal will and last testament. And then the only other issue I have, and I'm still working on it right now, and I'm trying to finish the POA, the POA for the medical POA and the financial POA and the power of attorney, and try to get those two finished so that I can give those three documents as a package to the people, to the students coming up, and to those people who are looking for it. And that's what I really want. I just feel that there is such a need to have that legal document for all adults, to have that available just in case something, God forbid, should happen. I mean, you could leave your residence, and 2 blocks away you could get T-boned, and that's it. And you're done. We never know. We never know what tomorrow will bring.
Yeah.
And you don't want the government telling your family what's going to happen with all of your assets and all those things. You want to control it, really, more than anything
Yeah.
else.
Well, let's take one step backwards just so you can introduce yourself to everyone because I know I told them a little bit about you and
Sure.
how we know each other, but yeah.
Yeah, we know each other because we're both coaches, financial coaches. And my financial background came when I was involved with a company that involved itself with life insurance, with long-term health insurance, with mortgages, with financial advice. I was able to encompass those facets of financial capabilities uh, and financial advice for individuals and couples. And that happened back in the early thousands. And I kept my finger in it for a number of years afterwards, although I involved myself later on I actually helped build a church. I was involved in facilities coordination. I was involved with logistics, transportation logistics, and transportation sales for a while there in the teens and the 2000 teens. And then I retired at about 2018 or 2021, trying to figure out what I was going to do because I was not comfortable sitting around, and I didn't want to play golf every day or play pickleball every day or whatever there. But I have this desire to serve and to always serve and to help others. I was teaching financial principles classes as of about 5 years ago. And I felt I got the opportunity to take a look at what financial coaching was about. And it made sense. That's where I've been ever since. My early years back in my 20s was spent in IT. I spent a number of years doing that, both on mainframe and microcomputers.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's my original background. My first job was at a company, a life insurance company, in programming and IT work. But after that, I ended up doing some security work, and I ended up um, what else was in there? I got involved in a family business. My family business, worked for my father for a while until he passed away, ran the company for a year. I didn't have control, so we sold the company. I sold my shares as well. And then I started the financial side. I started my financial work, my financial business, and enjoyed it. And that's where I really loved teaching people about finance, teaching people about things. The funny thing is that teaching people things that I didn't know because my parents never taught me.
Yeah.
And I got into trouble because by about 2008, I didn't realize how much trouble I was in financially. I was in tens of thousands of dollars in debt, thinking that things were okay, but they weren't.
Hmm.
And one thing led to another. My wife found a class, something called FPU, Financial Peace University, and we took it. I actually took it twice. And while we were in the process of getting out of debt, I met the owner, Dave Ramsey, at our church. He spoke at our church on a Sunday morning up in Barrington, Illinois, and he says, "Now, what are you doing to get out of debt?" I said, "Well, I'm delivering pizzas." He says, and he points to my chest, and he says, "That's a noble job. Keep it up." And I said, "Okay, I will." And it was great to get a chance to see him again this last August, and I've met him a couple times since then, and as I've enjoyed work as a coach, as a financial coach. I have never been in what would you say, a more encouraging, uplifting group of colleagues and financial coaches ever before in my life that I have here that you've experienced as well.
Yeah. That's what I tell people too. There's nothing like a Ramsey coach.
Oh my gosh. Well, the community is incredible.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what we surpass everyone
wow.
about because people are like, well, there's this other coaching program, and and I'm like, yeah, but you'll never find a group of coaches that will stop and give you their time freely and energy to pour into others. Yeah,
Absolutely. You're absolutely right.
yeah,
I have never been so encouraged. And insights. Where do you find people with backgrounds of and pastoring churches, shepherding people, teaching, police work? We have EMTs and paramedics who are also coaches. My daughter is a flight nurse here in Orlando, and
okay,
we have another, Chris out in California.
yes,
She's also a flight nurse, just like Becca, my daughter. And so we have her and others. We've got IRS enrolled agents, Christine, and lawyers. We have CPAs.
yeah,
Well, where else do you find that? And isn't it interesting that you or I could easily get on the phone and talk to them and ask them, how do you go about this, or how do you go about that? Uh, and at least get some good general knowledge
yeah.
of things that, when we're experiencing issues with our clients. I'm enthralled by the number of people we have in that, hundreds of people who are able to help us.
Yeah, that's so true.
My
So I
gosh.
guess you were delivering pizzas because that was your Dave job, right? That was part
That
of
was
your.
actually my full-time job because I kept trying to find other jobs, and I was making decent money, but man,
I love that because sometimes people are unemployed for a season, and there's no shame, like you're saying, in working at a grocery store, delivering pizzas, cooking food. You're earning
Whatever.
an honest living.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely. Why? If someone really, really wants to get out of debt, if they really want to get down the right path, it won't matter what they do. I've run into people who say, well, I don't know if I can do that. I said, hey, I don't talk to me because I've already worked 2 jobs for 9 years. I know what it's like.
Yeah.
Sometimes 3 jobs during that period. I worked 6, 7 days a week for 9 years. It was not fun, but I put myself into it. I took ownership.
You took
And
ownership.
that's where we really, the client needs to take ownership of what has happened. John Deloney's book, Own Your Past, Change Your Future, is so key to,
Yeah.
to helping people recognize that, okay, I got to get out of this. And we're not going to be wandering back out of debt. We've got to be
How humbling,
intentional.
because you must have been, what, in your 40s or 50s
I
when
was
you were
in
doing
my
this?
50s.
No way.
I was in
You
my
probably got
50s.
great tips, though. I could see you doing well on the tips, the customer service.
I loved it. I loved it. And I became good friends with a lot of the people who were purchasing that. They were probably a little bit better off than normal. And I guess I had a number of businessmen and businesswomen, doctors, people who just enjoyed it. I was very fortunate to be in a good company, a good restaurant. But all in all, again, maybe it was my serving capabilities that really helped. But I never stopped looking. I never stopped working, trying to find other companies. And I found a really good company, and I finally left. I finally left the pizza business, but then moved down to Central Illinois from Chicago area, and so that happened there. And I worked for another company for about 3 years, and then was done.
So what was it like to retire? Because I think when we both did the coaching thing program, maybe 2021. I think you're still working full time at that time.
Oh yes, I was working full time in 2021,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to, but I ended up doing it for a friend. And it finally came October, and I said, I gave you I gave them 4 months to find someone to replace me, and I couldn't do it. And that was in 21 or in 22, actually. I'm sorry, that was in 22. In 2022, I started coaching in 2020, 21. I think it was in
I think it was 21. I
2020
think
or
we are about
21,
the same.
2021. January 2021 is when I first started coaching. April is when I became a Ramsey preferred coach. But that first year was a bit of quite a wash. The next year was very difficult because I was working, and I finally stopped working full time,
You're
and
working a lot too.
went to my own business for quite a while, and I've enjoyed it ever since. I have never really felt so satisfied by helping people, seeing the light bulbs go off, making people really get their head together around their finances, to see that they're getting out of debt. I've got a couple right down here in Florida, about 15, 20 minutes away. I've been with them for almost 2 years, and they are going to be, I think they'll be debt free probably either by the end of this month or January. And so,
Mm.
so exciting to see.
Wow. That is so exciting to be part of people's journey.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, the best Christmas present ever or New Year's present.
Yeah. And it is. What else could we do? I mean, what better satisfaction do you have by giving of yourself to help other people, people who are willing to learn, people who are willing to listen to things that you've learned that you will work. And if we can do that, that's the way to do it.
Yeah. So going
It's
back to
been
the
good.
will thing, I know you had a personal story about why it's so important to you. If you want to tell
Well,
people what.
yeah, eh, fortunately, I got a will. I didn't get a will until my 40s. I didn't make up a will until my 40s, and uh, my wife and I recovered. But I ran into close friends who didn't know where to go. When a husband died, a friend of mine, they died, and the wife, the kids didn't have anything to go on. And then I said, "Gee whiz, what do you do?" And she wasn't sure what was out there, she wasn't sure what would you say, what assets they really had.
Yeah.
And so nothing was laid out for her. And it was very, very difficult. Then came a time when I ran into a family that didn't have a will, and the basically it was mayhem. And I saw more people, more brothers and sisters become estranged because what nobody knew where the assets were supposed to go. Unfortunately, the mother and father had both died, leaving
Mm.
kids. And the kids ended up going to, where did they go? Did they go to grandparents? I think they went to the grandparents. And let's see, the kids went to the grandparents, but the brothers and sisters were all there. They were available. And yet the state decided where they were going to go.
Mhm.
And it was literally mayhem. And it was up to a few lawyers to take care of whatever had to be taken care of. I saw brothers and sisters not talk to each other. They just broke off relationships, and it's not right. And so I also found out that the state isn't necessarily the the best expert when it comes to individual families determining what they want to do for and so I found out also that my kids didn't have a will, not until recently, and
Mhm.
in the last few years. And so I've gotten them finally to get their act together to get a will put together for the kids, and it's our grandkids. So whether they're with whether there's and sisters
Mhm.
on one side or another, or whatever happens, I want them to be covered, to be know that they're going to have a place to go if something, God forbid, should happen.
Yeah. That brings up a really important point. It's not just about money and assets. It's
Mm-mm.
with children also deciding what's going to happen should the worst happen.
Yeah, and it's one thing to have real tiny kids, infants and toddlers, but it's another story when they're teenagers. And I would implore, if anybody's watching, I would implore the parents to determine and really think deep as to where the kids will be, because until they're 18, they they're not the majority. They're not a person of majority age, and so they're not determining where they're going to go. We do
Yeah.
have a lot of kids who are 16 and 17 on the streets, and I would very much prefer if they had a place to go that was already written up, that was already decided on, so that they and agreed to, that so they could go. If it would be a sister or a brother, or rather an uncle or an aunt. Sometimes it's just a friend, because there are no other siblings to
Yeah.
go to.
It doesn't have to be family.
It doesn't have to be family. But if the kids know, and that's important, I think, especially when they get to an age of, I think, 12, 10, 12, 13, 14, before that happens, before they get on their own, I think it's so important for the parents to at least let them know what's happening, what would happen. Not that they want to be morbid. You don't want to have a real morbid conversation about it, but just in case, we want you to know we want you to know that you're being thought of and you're being taken care of in case something, God forbid, should happen to us. And
Okay.
it's really, really important.
Yeah. What other kind of tips can you give people regarding wills and all that?
Well,
Assume
First of all,
someone's
there's different kinds of wills. I found out that you can have a will for together, just one will for both the husband and wife, or both husband and wife. I'll speak to that at least. I forgot the
mirror
term.
will, right? They mirror each other. Is that what you're
Yeah,
talking
it's a mirror will. Yeah, where you have one will, but it's for both of you. And if one passes, it's still in effect, and it's not a big deal. But I would suggest both having their own wills, both the husband and wife having their own wills, and they're mirrored with each other. Yes, generally. Um, and then, but you can actually do this, as I said before. I created a template. You don't have to have a lawyer to do a will, to have a will put together. One of the keys there, though, is having some really important having some important parts in the will. They have to be there, who the beneficiaries are and who the executor is, who the guardians are, basic things, and what assets go to who. If you decide you want anything special to go to, have any assets that are specifically geared toward one child or another, or one friend or another, for that matter, for family member, doesn't matter. And then I guess the other thing is, there are a number of companies, and I think you're familiar with them. LegalZoom and Mama Bear Legal are the two that I know. I know there's a third one, but those are the two big ones that I know of. Mama Bear Legal Forms, and LegalZoom both have wills and last testaments that you can purchase, and they have deals periodically throughout the year. Probably $200 to $300 for both. But they include a power of attorney for health and a power of attorney for medical. And so you can actually do that on your own if you want. And they do have customer service people in the United States that can help you there. That can help you do that.
Yeah.
There's another legal company, I can't think of the name of it, but they offer wills and last testaments as well. It's a what we call a hierarchy type of organization. It's a multi-level organization. But the funny thing is, I used to be a part of it, but I can't remember what the name of it is. And then you also got lawyers. Most lawyers will have a template to work with, and they'll just put your name in and put whatever needs to be done. So
Yeah. You're talking about with the companies, the difference is you're buying the template and you have to fill it out yourself.
yeah, you do,
And you
but
get that notarized.
you
Yeah.
can get it help. You can get help. They do have customer service help with people who are paralegals who actually can make it work for you.
Oh, yeah.
But you
Yeah,
can,
but
but
I'm
you can
just
also get
emphasizing
it.
they got to put in the work themselves. They got
They
to fill
do.
out the
They do.
template.
And I think you have to put in the work yourself no matter what, especially if you have children, because you have to determine who are going to be, you have to determine who do you want to have be guardians for your children. And I would highly suggest finding a second set of guardians just in case you haven't touched the will and you move away, or something happens to that family, parents divorce or whatever happens, and now you're stuck. Oh, but I've got a second set at least to work with and let them know. And the same thing with an executor. I would highly suggest having having a successor executor in the will, and possibly even a third. Just things that people like that can change fairly easily. And so just to keep your, you can have multiple sets there as guardians and executors for those who need guardians, by the way. I mean, if you don't have any kids at home, it doesn't matter. So that would work. I have heard of lawyers creating wills for anywhere from $700 to $2,000. It varies depending upon where you are in the country. Every state has its own laws regarding wills and last testaments. And so when someone is going to LegalZoom or to Mama Bear Legal, they will get the necessary documents for that particular state. And so you have to remember that. If I move to Florida, I have to make sure that my will is compatible with what the state laws are as well. So I might have to change some things. And individuals can change their wills. They can add I call them addendums or codicils, they call. You can add information and say, oh, by the way, I have this antique that I want to go to. I want it to go to Aunt Matilda. I said, okay, great. You can put that in there, sign it, have it signed, have it notarized, and then just add it to the will, and you're done. You don't have to recreate anything in particular. I think once that's done, life can be a lot easier. I think life can be easier for people who are really on the go. And I would hope that more and more people will recognize the need for that. Right now, only 35% of Americans have a will. That's not much. I mean, compared to what could be, probably the people who were most affected, or the people, if you remember a songwriter named Prince, and he didn't have a will, and they're still fighting it in Minnesota. They're still fighting the estate. I don't know what's going on lately, but I don't want to be a part of it. That's for sure. I think it was the Miami Dolphins that had problems. Or they had problems with their taxes, and so they ended up having to sell. The owners of the Miami Dolphins had to sell the Miami Dolphins to cover their tax. That's really odd. It's an odd thing, and I think that it goes now toward, along with wills and last testaments, I would highly suggest people at least sitting down, at least those who are out of debt and are starting to accumulate wealth and assets, to take a look, to talk to an estate planner. There's no reason not to. And I know many estate planners who would be happy to sit down for half an hour to an hour and just go over some basic information for a couple that has started to accumulate some wealth. And I'm sure you may have clients that have done that finally in that era of life. We've had an estate planner for about a year, and about a year. And I'm glad we do, because there's some laws that we're going to be facing sometime in the next 6 months. Things that will pertain to us in estate planning, and we can plan ahead and know how much we need in taxes, how much we need in call them death taxes, estate taxes primarily.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be a little messy at times, but it should be done, I think. But all in all, I've given out my template for about I'd say 80 people, 75, 80 people, primarily students.
Yeah, that's good.
And they've actually used them. Most have actually used them, and then they've gone on to get their own wills done with lawyers or with whoever needs to be worked with. So it's worked out well. I've enjoyed it, and I'm offering it to other coaches. If they want a copy of it, fine. Have a copy of it. You can give it to your clients or give it to your students. I'm happy to. Not a big deal. I also provide information. I actually send about 10 attachments. That's, does everybody need a will? What types of wills are there? What is intestate, which is condition if you don't have a will, and what's the impact of that? And so, can you do a will without a lawyer? A few other documents. Oh, what to do in case you're being asked to take care of someone who has passed away, and what's the checklist of things that you need to consider when you're taking care of the estate of someone who just passed away. I love when somebody needs it. I'm glad to offer it. So to your listeners, if somebody needs one, hey, just holler. I'll be happy to send it. So
Okay.
we'll do that.
That's fantastic. Well, I don't
Sure.
want to take any more of your time.
Whatever.
Yeah, you really stressed the importance of having a will. Thanks for coming on my show.
Sure. It's a blast.
Yeah. Any last parting words? And then, of course, you're offering, if people want to message you to get the,
Yeah,
any.
if they want to, there's no cost. I mean, I have no trouble, especially when it comes to coaches. If a coach is listening to this and they want a copy of this, these are all documents, like Word documents that I have, and they can change their name on there. They can change all they want. Now, I don't have a problem with that at all. It's like what we talked about originally in the beginning about our coach community is incredible. And I'm happy to pay it forward to those who need it. So it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure that at all. So
Okay.
happy to
Well,
do
thank
it.
you so much. Thank you for joining us all the way from
Sure.
Florida.
Sure. Not too long, right? But I'm enjoying it now. And they put it that way.
Yeah, it
It
really got
really is
dark
amazing.
there.
So, well, you take care. Merry Christmas to you and to all the listeners.